If you've noticed over the last few days or couple weeks now that you have holes in the leaves of your plants, they look like they've been skeletonized, or if your blooms have been eaten through, then you likely have Japanese beetles. In today's video, I want to give you 5 tips on how you can help manage their populations, and I'm going to give you one tip of something you should absolutely not do, and it's a common thing people are told to do, but it's going to make the situation way worse, so you definitely want to stick around to the end of this video. I'm going to talk to you about the life cycle, what they love to eat, what their host plant is, which is something that we all have in our gardens, making them really difficult to deal with. And then I'm going to take you through those tips on how you can manage them, so that way you can help deal with these populations and save your favorite flowers and plants. If you're new here, my name is Bree from Urban Gardening Canada, and I garden in Ottawa Zone 5. Unfortunately, Japanese beetles are nearly impossible to get rid of, so the best thing you're going to be able to do is manage the populations, and that's what my tips are in this video. Because Japanese beetles have massive populations and their host for their larvae is grass, and all of us have grass, which is why it's so difficult to deal with their populations, and they can fly for kilometers, which means that you can still have them, even if you're managing them in your garden, they can still come in from other people's gardens, and that is also what I'm going to touch on in this video. But I promise that by the time you've learned all these tips, that you're going to be able to manage them at a way better level than you are right now. So before we get further into this video, I'm curious to know, how have the Japanese beetle populations been around you? And have you noticed that they've gotten worse or better? And if you've tried anything, I'd love to hear in the comments below all of the tricks that you've tried to help deal with the populations. And once you're done hearing all of my tips, have you tried any of them? And what has worked best for you? Japanese beetles were first discovered in North America in 1916, and then they were discovered in Canada in 1929. I think this is so interesting because when I first started to garden, that was the first time I ever encountered Japanese beetles, so they felt like this new bug that was totally invasive. And then to find out that they've been here for 100 years, I was really surprised about that, for the fact that they are still so destructive and have such massive populations. Oftentimes we think that invasive species are something that is very new to the country, but this is actually the opposite. 100 years is actually quite a long amount of time. So apart from the damage of adults, you'll know that you have Japanese beetle larvae if a couple different things. The first is if you're ever digging up your lawn to build new gardens and you see these little white larvae in your grass. They could be June beetle larvae or European chafer. They all look really, really similar, but they're these white larvae that live in the grass. If you're digging it up in the spring or the fall, you're more likely to find them because they are higher up and they eat the roots of your grass as their host plant in order to grow up to be their adult self. So if you find these, then you know that you likely have populations of Japanese beetles in your property. The other thing is if you wake up in the morning and your lawn is all dug up and you have big chunks of area that have been turned over or just holes all around your yard, this also is a good indicator that you've got the larvae in your lawn, because skunks are coming in at nighttime and they're digging them up to eat them. So as much as we think skunks can be a nuisance, they are a big benefit to help kill these larvae, and so just allow them to dig around. I know it makes your lawn look terrible, but just allow them to come through and eat up all the larvae, and then in the spring or the fall you can fill those holes with some soil and lay some grass seed down and fix that for next year. So understanding the life cycle of Japanese beetles is really important to know how to manage their populations. So adult beetles emerge from the ground in late June or early July, which is why you've noticed such a large amount of populations coming out right now. So what happens is the adults live for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, and they eat plants in order to finish their life cycle, so that way they can lay eggs. They like over 300 different types of plants, so there's pretty well a guarantee you have something in your garden that they like. Then they go into the ground to lay their eggs, and one female Japanese beetle can lay up to 80 eggs. So they lay them in the grass and they hatch, and the larvae in the fall time will feed on the roots of the lawn. Then they will burrow down deeper into the ground over winter time to hibernate, and then come spring, when it warms up again, they find their way back up to the shallow part where the grass roots are, and they feed again before they come out as adults in late June, where we are right now. So this is really important to know, because of one of the tips I'm going to give you is understanding where the larvae live in order to do a good job of managing their populations. So like I mentioned, they are a generalist feeder. So unlike a cabbage moth, where the cabbage moth lays its eggs on brassicas like cabbage or kale, where you can manage their populations, Japanese beetles will eat just about anything. But they do have some favorites, and unfortunately those favorites include roses. So if you grow roses, then you really know Japanese beetles, because they will eat the blooms, especially before they even open. They will burrow through and eat the flower, and they have ruined so many of my flower blooms for me that it just is so upsetting. But they also really love Rose of Sharon, hollyhocks, and raspberries. So right now for me, where I find the majority of my Japanese beetles is on my raspberries behind me. This is where they spend a lot of their time, but they'll still eat things like dill and zinnias and all kinds of other plants. So Japanese beetle damage is fairly recognizable. When it comes to blooms such as roses, they will actually eat holes all the way through the rose and pretty much damage it and make it look ugly. Plus they'll have all of their insect poop everywhere. So they really give themselves away, especially in the blooms of roses. And when it comes to leaves, they do something called skeletonizing it. And what that is they're eating the soft tissue between the veins of the leaf. So you'll have the exterior part of the leaf still in shape, and then all of the veins, almost like a grid in a way, showing up, and all of that tissue inside of it is gone. So it makes it very obvious that you do have Japanese beetles, so you know that it's time to start looking for them and taking care of that situation. I think the only good thing about Japanese beetles is that they don't carry any common pathogens. So cucumber beetles carry bacterial wilt and they'll ruin your cucumbers, but Japanese beetles don't do that. So they are going to ruin the look of your leaves or make your rose blooms look ugly, but for the most part, they're not going to kill your plants and they're not going to give any type of disease to them. The only thing you have to be mindful of is if your plants are really young and small. So they love hollyhock. My hollyhocks are quite small and they've just been eating them to the point that it makes it really difficult for the plant to grow. But when it comes to my raspberries, they're eating the leaves, but they're not killing the plant. And so it's not so bad from that perspective. They're not stopping my raspberries from producing. So I think that's probably the only benefit of them, is that they're not that destructive. Okay, before we get into the tips on how you can manage Japanese beetles, I do want to talk about my course that is going to teach you a lot of things like in this video, and that is specifically how you can manage pests in a way that is sustainable. I'm never going to tell you to use insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, because that is so damaging on the environment, and these pests are actually the bottom of the food chain for all of these other animals. So when you learn to garden with the other animals such as skunks or birds around you, they're going to help maintain these pests. The population of Japanese beetles could be so much worse if you didn't implement these sustainable options, because you're not working with nature, but you're fighting against it by spraying things. And that's what this course is all about. It's about how to be more sustainable and more resilient. As the pest populations get worse, as the weather gets worse, you're going to learn how to be stronger and better and not have to feel like you're trying to chase the weather changes, but you're actually keeping up with it. There are now chemicals that they are spraying onto our crops that have microplastics on them, which means you and I are going to start eating microplastics because of the chemicals that they're spraying. And I'm just not into that. I don't want to be eating plastics. And so for me, it's very important that I know how to garden in a way that I can deal with these pests without going insane and angry, but also without hurting the nature around me, because these corporations don't necessarily have our best interests in mind, which means that our food systems, you're seeing all these recalls that are happening lately. Our food system is falling apart, and I want to make sure that you know how to garden in a way that can handle any type of weather changes. It's super smoky out today. There's so much wildfire smoke here, and everything is going to be a lot more complicated. I want you to use this course to make sure that you can keep up with it and grow a strong garden. So if you're interested in it, you can even get a free preview of it, take a tour of the course. I'll leave it in the link below for you so you can check it out there. And now let's get into the tips on how you can protect your garden against these Japanese beetles. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, there's no way you can fully get rid of these Japanese beetles. Their populations are really, really high. They've been here for 100 years in order to build up those populations. And unless all of your neighbors around you are doing these exact same steps, it's just not going to happen. So the best thing that you can do is learn the tips on how you can manage the populations in your garden, reduce the damage, and reduce their populations for next year. So that's what these tips are all about. The first tip is the most effective tip that you're going to be able to do, and that is to hand pick them off and dump them into soapy water. So there's a couple ways you can do it, especially if you're very heebie-jeebie about touching insects. The first is to wear a glove, so at least you're not touching them. If that helps, having that barrier between your skin and the bug, this is one of the better ways to do it. I prefer to do it just because I get a little about them. And the other option is to just, a lot of times they're on top of the leaf or on the bottom, and you hold your cup there and you just flip the leaf over and smack the leaf, or if they're on the bottom of it, you put the cup underneath the leaf and you just smack the top of the leaf, and then you don't even have to touch the bug. So to me, that's some of the better ways to do it. I've heard that they are more groggy and slower in the mornings and the evenings, although I've heard that about cucumber beetles as well, and that didn't appear to be true for me. So find a time that works best for you and go out and pick them regularly. So depending on how big your garden is or how bad the populations are, you can just use a cup or you can use a big bowl, and all you're going to do is put 1 pump of dish soap into it to the bowl of water. If you are going to dump this bowl of dead insect water outside, please, please, please make sure that your soap is biodegradable and it's allowed to be dumped outside, because it's not the same as when it goes down the drain and you are having a water treatment plant clean it up. If you're dumping it directly outside, please only use biodegradable soap. So we go out once a day, we go clean them up, and then I let the cup sit for, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe, and then I just dump the water out in the garden and the birds can go in and eat it if they want to. Another reason why you want to make sure that your soap is good for the environment. You don't want to be poisoning any animals with any type of soap that has nasty chemicals in it. So every morning, every evening, lunchtime, whatever it is, you can just go out hunting for them and you can sweep them in, slap them in, whatever it is, and then you're going to see them swimming around, and probably within like 10 to 15 seconds they end up dying. The one thing you just have to be prepared for is that Japanese beetles do fly. So if you don't catch them fast enough, they can fly away, which can catch you off guard. And the other thing that they really like to do is they'll just like drop themselves, which is, so this is why I like to have the cup underneath where they are, because if you even tap them a little bit or they recognize you're there, they either will fly off or they just literally like let go and then drop and they'll fall down the plant or onto the ground, and it's really irritating. So just making sure that you have the bowl or the cup underneath means that if they use this mechanism of just dropping themselves down, then they are choosing to drop themselves into the bowl of water, and that just makes it so much easier. And the reason that you're putting soap into the water is because it makes it slippery, so that way they can't climb out of the cup or the bowl, because if you just have water in there, they could potentially find a way to climb out of it. But the soap is creating a layer on top of it where it's just too slippery and they can't even get above water or climb out of it. Sometimes you'll see one Japanese beetle climbing on top of another one. They don't care, they want to survive themselves, but they just can't get over top of that in order to breathe and survive. So that's why you want to include the soap in there. All right, so the second tip is that there are a lot of birds out there that are insect eaters. So this includes cardinals, starlings, robins, blue jays, sparrows, and crows. So if you create an environment that is friendly to the birds are going to come in and they need something to eat. So they're going to eat these beetles. And the interesting thing is that sparrows are very, very common and they're tiny. So it's surprising to think that they would eat a Japanese beetle. But I've actually watched a sparrow chase a cicada and try and kill it for food. And I was watching it and I was like, you guys are almost the same size as each other. How could it even go for that? So it was really, really interesting to watch. So the more bird friendly you make your backyard, the more they're going to come in and the more of these insects they're going to eat. I mentioned this earlier, is that the birds are actually keeping my cabbage moths in check. So the moths are around, but and I watch them lay eggs on my plants, but there are no cabbage worms around because the birds have been eating them. So for me, this is such an amazing way. I don't feel like I'm out at war every single time I'm in my garden because they are out here all day long eating. You can hear one right now, and this is a really, really good way. So certain ways that you can make your garden more bird friendly includes having safe places for them to hide. So for me, I have all my cedar bushes around me, but if you have a tree in your backyard, if you have a bird bath, this is another spot because it means that they have access to clean themselves and to drink water. So this is a really good way to bring them in. I don't necessarily recommend a bird feeder because not all birds that eat seeds eat insects, and also you will distract them from eating the bugs by eating the bird seed because it's obviously a lot easier than foraging for bugs. But it's really just about creating a place that's safe, so not having any indoor cats being outside. If your dog is out, just know that the birds won't be around in that moment. But you can also fill your garden during nesting season with your pet's fur because the birds will use this in their nest. So it's just a way to welcome them in, to say, hey, come here, spend time here, and they are going to in turn eat all of the pests off your garden. All right, so this one is another personal favorite of mine, and that is inviting parasitic insects into your garden. So with the Japanese beetle, there are 2 of them that exist, and both of those were also introduced into North America in order to help deal with the populations. Not long after Japanese beetles were first found in North America, within 10 years, these predators were also introduced to our environment. So one is a fly and it targets the adult Japanese beetles, and one is a parasitic wasp and it targets the grubs of the Japanese beetle. So you really want to make sure that you are inviting both of them to your garden because when they are working together, obviously it's really going to help with the populations. So the fly that is a parasite to Japanese beetles is called the winsome fly, or in Latin it is called Istochetta eldritchi. I'm going to write it in here for you guys because I do not know how to speak Latin. And this is a fly that got introduced in North America in 1920. And you'll know that you have them around your garden if you see any of the Japanese beetles that have an egg that is usually on the back of their head on their neck, although I have seen pictures of them online that they have them along the side of their body. Not to be confused with the white fluffy spots on the side of a Japanese beetle. They do actually have white floofs along the edging of them, but there will be an egg, and the main place I've ever seen it is on the back of their neck behind their head. So this fly lays the egg, and typical of parasitic insects, the egg hatches, it eats its way into the bug, and then it turns into a larva and eats its way back out. And this is no different with the winsome fly. There are studies that have been done where when they finally realized that there was a parasitic fly against them, and they opened up the body of the beetle and there was a full-on larva inside of it. Yeah, the pictures, so it's pretty gross, but also amazing at the same time. So by creating a space where the winsome fly wants to spend time in your garden means that you are going to have a predator that is going to help you kill the adult beetles of the Japanese beetle. So luckily, the winsome fly has a taste for female Japanese beetles. So those are the ones that they most commonly lay their eggs on, which is good news because female Japanese beetles can lay up to 80 eggs an adult, and that is a lot of population increase. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a safe space for them, and some of the plants that they like are the same as most other parasitic wasps, which is really good news, and that includes yarrow, dill, and cilantro. So not only are they really good to include in your garden because yarrow is great for all pollinators, and dill and cilantro are amazing vegetables for you to grow yourself, but they also are known to bring in all kinds of parasitic wasps, and in this case, the parasitic fly. So by growing these, you're going to help deal with the adult populations. Now, the second one that goes after the grubs is a parasitic wasp. Again, I'm going to read to you the Latin name of it. It is called Typhia vernalis, and it was introduced in 1925 from Korea. So this parasitic wasp actually lays its eggs in the grubs of the Japanese beetle. So they're actually timed really well with each other. So when this parasitic wasp wants to lay its eggs, it burrows into the ground and finds these grubs, lays its eggs inside of them, and the same thing, they're going to hatch and eat their way back out of the larva, therefore killing the larva before it ever can become an adult. And it all sounds so gross, but at the same time, it's so amazing. I love the idea of it. I'm hoping one day to catch a hornworm that has the parasitic wasps that are going to turn it into a zombie. I just think it's so fun what nature can do. And this is exactly why you want to make sure you create an environment where everybody's working together, because why should you stress out if it is food for all of these other insects? So inviting these to your garden is a lot more difficult because of what their preference is. So they like to eat the honeydew, that is the sap or syrup that aphids pull out of different plants. And apparently their favorite is the tulip tree. And to be honest, not a lot of us have tulip trees. I think they're also only part of the Carolinian forest. I'll correct myself here if I'm wrong. And they also like maple and cherry trees, which makes it a lot easier because it's not hard to grow a maple or a cherry tree. Not like we want aphids pulling out the honeydew off of them though, but that is what their favorite food source is. So if you see aphids around, just know that A, the ants are going to be feeding off them, but maybe you're also helping to feed this wasp in order to help battle the Japanese beetles. Okay, so this next tip is one that you don't see very often, and in my opinion, next to hand picking into soapy water, this is the most important one that you could be doing, and that is to be getting nematodes. So nematodes are these microscopic living organisms, and they are found everywhere. There are beneficial nematodes and there are also detrimental nematodes, but there is one specific strain that targets the grubs of the Japanese beetle, and that one, again, I'm going to read. It is called Heterorhabditis bacteriophora, or HB for short, which is a lot easier. But if you do a quick search and look up nematodes for Japanese beetles, just make sure that it's the HB variety, and they are going to be the ones that you need. So what happens is you take a sprayer that attaches to your garden hose, you put the nematodes inside of that, and then you spray it on your lawn when the hose water comes through it. And you only want to do this in the spring or the fall, because as I had mentioned in the life cycle portion of this is what's so important, is that you want to pick it at a time where the larvae are at the top of the grass line. So in the wintertime, they're going really deep, and in the summertime, they've already pupated and become adults. So you want to be able to spray these nematodes both in spring and the fall time. And these nematodes are actually going to go into the lawn and they eat the Japanese beetle grubs. So this is going to be a major way that you can help deal with the populations, is if you can get them in the fall before they even can burrow deeper in the ground, and then again in the springtime, any of the leftover ones, you're going to get them before they even come out as adults. Now again, since Japanese beetles can fly a long distance, you can't stop them permanently, but you're really going to help deal with their populations by spraying these nematodes. The most important thing that you have to recognize is that not everybody's going to be selling good quality nematodes to you. They are a living organism and they require refrigeration in order to stay alive. So if you are at a greenhouse and there's a box of nematodes on the shelf, don't buy them because they're not alive. They can't stay living like that. You have to buy them from a source that is either they're refrigerated in the store, or when they ship them to you, they do ship them refrigerated. And then once you get them, you have to use them fairly quickly. They can live in the fridge, I think, up to 2 weeks, but after that, you have to use them. So make sure that when you are buying them, you are prepared that when they show up, you're ready to do the work of spraying them into the lawn. Thankfully, it's not a ton of work, but you do have to buy the applicator. I've never seen anyone sell the nematodes and the applicator together, and if you're going to continuously buy nematodes, you don't want to keep buying an applicator anyways. So make sure that you go out and buy that first before you buy the nematodes, so that way when they come, you're ready to go and you don't procrastinate and kill them, because these nematodes aren't exactly the cheapest thing that you can buy. However, they do work, and not only are they going to save your plants from adult population, but a lot of times the grubs can kill your lawn. So if you do care about what your grass looks like and if the lawn is green, then you're definitely going to want to spray these, because they're going to also keep your lawn nice and green and healthy. Okay, so this is my final tip, and then after this I'm going to tell you the one thing you should not do. So make sure that you keep watching around for that. But my final tip of what you should do is, if you've tried all of these other 4 things and you still want something else to do, I say plant trap crops at the edge of your property. So whether it's roses, I'm not sure who would use roses as a trap crop, but if you want a rose of Sharon or a hollyhock, or even raspberries are a really great choice, because you can always plant them at the edge of your property. And again, it's not going to stop them from producing their berries on them, but by putting them at the far edge away from your prized possessions, there's a good chance that you can coax them away from your plants, and they will go eat those ones on the edge of your property and not in your garden. It's not going to work perfectly, but it can help minimize the damage. So again, if you wanted to try that, I really recommend it. Rose of Sharon and hollyhocks, I find them to be like bananas over. My hollyhock looks terrible because of them. And I have you'll see them beetle on beetle on beetle inside of these plants. So doing an edging of hollyhocks is both beautiful, the bees are gonna like it, but you also are gonna have your Japanese beetles disappear over there and not be in your garden. Okay, now let's talk about the one tip of what you should never do, and that is, do not buy a Japanese beetle trap. Don't do it. You're wasting your money, you're wasting your time, and you're making the situation worse. So there was a study done that I'm going to link below, and it turns out that yes, these traps will catch beetles, but what it does is it puts out a scent or a call to these beetles, and you'll get populations at a significantly higher number than had you not had the trap out there. So you are bringing in the beetles to your property, and it turns out that these traps only catch 75% of the beetles that show up, which means that you now have that remaining 25% there, which could turn out, because it attracts them, to be a higher number of beetles in your garden than had you not put the trap there at all. And that is what they were discovering, is that you're bringing in that many more and you're making the populations worse than if there was no trap at all. And so what happens is that the more beetles that come in, the more pheromones that are being put out, and all of the other beetles can smell it, and they are coming in mass numbers. And in the same study, they found out that the damage around the traps was significantly higher than if there was no trap at all. So if you think your garden is damaged now, put a trap up and your garden's going to be so much more damaged. And then you're going to think to yourself, oh, good thing I have this trap, because look at how bad the damage is. But it turns out that it's actually the trap causing that damage. So whatever you do, don't get yourself a trap. They're a waste of money, they're not helping anything, and they're not gonna help you overall. And as you can see, these traps have been around for a while now, and the populations have not gotten any better. So this is obviously not making a big difference on these populations. However, all of those 5 tips that I gave you before is really gonna help with the populations in your yard. And the more of us that start implementing these tips, the more that these populations can get put under control. And at least in your neighborhood, you guys can help protect each other and your gardens. And those are all of the tips that I have for you. And I hope that you've never tried the trap, and if you were thinking about buying one, I've just saved you a little bit of money and a lot of damage on your plants. And if you did enjoy today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check out this video here. Bye.